Good day again, actually good afternoon. We have arrived to the semifinals of our debate competition. In order to get things moving as fast as possible, I'm already gonna make the call of attendance. So we have on one side Radu and Alexandru. Are you guys both present?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Apart from that, on the opposing team we have Papiu, Miruna and Petra. Are you both present?
Yes.
Okay, the proceedings are in order. So now, as you well know, we shall commence to the coin toss. I shall now share my screen so that you guys can see. I ask for confirmation that everyone can see the coin.
We can see it.
Thank you.
Yes.
And as per the rules, speaker 4 Petra will call heads or tails.
We choose heads.
You have won the coin toss. So you get to choose if you are pro or con, or first or second. What do you choose, Petra?
We choose to be pro.
Okay, let me note that down in the ballot. Team Papiu is pro, Team Brukenthal is contra. Team Brukenthal, Radu and Alexandru, are you speaking first or second?
We'd like to speak second.
Okay. Before we begin, I would like to check if the order of speakers is as it's on the ballot. So, Miruna, you are the first speaker for your team.
Yes.
Okay. Radu, you are the first speaker for your team.
Yep.
Okay. Now that's in order. Again, to clarify, the debate will be opened by Team Papiu, who is on the pro side, and we have Miruna as the first speaker. So, do you need any amount of your prep time, or can you start?
No, I can start.
Okay, let me just set the timer.
Yeah.
Apart from that, as you well know, anything you quote that's directly as evidence can be asked to be shown. So have everything at the ready. The first speaker is Miruna, and she has 4 minutes to give us the opening arguments, or actually the contentions of this debate. The timer is set, and you may start at your leisure.
Okay, so I'll start my timer in 3, 2, 1, go. Nowadays, the pace at which technology is developing is simply mind-boggling. Access to news has become easier and cheaper than ever in history. News consumption has grown unprecedentedly, and as expected, with the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, social media has rapidly become a crucial communication tool for information generation and consumption. As a study by the Reuters Institute finds, WhatsApp saw the biggest growth in general, with increases of around 10 percentage points in some countries, while across age groups, use of Instagram for news has doubled since 2018 and looks likely to overtake Twitter over the next year. We will prove the need for corporations and users to be held accountable for hate speech, incitement to violence, and fake news on relevant topics through our 2 contentions: the leniency of the regulatory framework and the environmental aspects of social media. Firstly, in the absence of any specific legal rules, social media platforms have become environments where misinformation and disinformation flourish. To put things into perspective, when misinformation like coronavirus is not heat resistant and will be killed in a temperature of 26 to 27 degrees was proliferated, many people from countries with high temperature thought that they are not going to be affected by the coronavirus. Likewise, in the UK, ill-informed conspiracy theories linking the rollout of 5G technology to the spread of the pandemic have escalated to the extent that telecommunications
You can't hear her anymore, can you?
Exactly. So I'm taking a break on the time while she has a technical issue.
hear me?
Yes, I put a break on your time
Oh.
because you had that problem. Is this something we're going to expect often?
This has happened before in the last
Okay.
debate. Can she come and speak from my laptop?
If the other colleagues are okay with that, I have no objections. Judges, do you allow that? Okay.
Oops. Sorry.
Technical issues are to be expected when you're talking over Zoom. I think no one will hold it against you as long as we can resolve it and hear you and the debate to the end. I paused your time, so there's nothing to be worried about. You're not going to lose 2 minutes of time by technical issues.
Thank you. So I'll pick up right where I left off.
No.
What was
Okay.
what was the last thing you heard?
The last thing I heard was that you were speaking about the United Kingdom and the problems with the coronavirus in the United Kingdom. Then you started cutting off, and I lost you completely. My colleagues can say as well.
All right, I'll start from there.
Corona was the last thing I heard.
Likewise, in the UK, ill-informed conspiracy theories linking the rollout of 5G technology to the spread of the pandemic have escalated to the extent that the telecommunications infrastructure has been attacked. Moreover, these conspiracy theories have fueled attacks on telecoms workers, with Openreach reporting almost 50 incidents of abuse in April 2020. This proves that social media corporations have failed to stop the spread of misleading information, which has led to the disruption of political agendas, public order, and to public health being endangered. On the subject of our second contention, I would like to put forward the notorious case of Donald Trump's impeachment on charges of incitement to violence. His 70-minute address toward his supporters on January 6th, which took place in Washington, D.C., a real-life place, not a virtual environment like social media, had visible effects soon after he took the applause. It resulted in the Capitol riots and the deaths of 4 rioters and 1 police officer. A legal process was launched, at the end of which Donald Trump was acquitted. And so, our assertion is that if action was taken against incitement to violence in real life, it needs to be legally addressed when it happens on social media as well, especially when it is done by influential figures. Why? Well, because as of 2021, social networking sites are estimated to have 3.6 billion users, because the internet traffic is also increasingly non-human, with more than half of the traffic being generated by bots. And lastly, because on social media, we tackle the issue of echo chambers and content bubbles, dangerous not only because of the disinformation campaigns they foster, but also because they give rise to dangerous trends, movements, hate groups, all of which pose a threat to our society. Take, for instance, the recent spark in COVID-related racism, hate, and xenophobia targeted at Asian communities. A study by the Cornell University on the largest data set of anti-Asian hate, spanning 3 months and containing over 30 million tweets, identifies 891,204 hate and 200,198 counter-hate tweets. Now, imagine a number even as low as 100 users taking their violence to the real world, harming Asian people. This has been happening as the advocacy group Stop AAPI Hate received more than 2,800 reports of anti-Asian American hate incidents in America nationwide last year. And just this Wednesday, 6 Asian women were murdered in the state of Georgia. It is therefore our firm belief as the Pro Team that the leniency of the regulatory framework and the developments fostered by it have menacing effects on our society, and thus users and corporations should be held legally responsible for fake news, incitement to violence, and hate speech posted on these platforms. Thank you.
Thank you. I just want to clarify, so we have it on tape. She did overstep her time by 10 to 15 seconds, but I'm not sure how much time she lost in the technical Zoom part, so I let her finish the last sentence. I believe that was okay, and that no one will hold it against us. Apart from that, we would like to proceed to speaker 2, which is Radu. Radu, do you need any prep time before?
No, I don't need any prep time.
Okay.
I'm ready to start.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll start in 3, 2, 1, No. We live in a digitalized world, the internet being a relatively new technology and an opportunity to promote publicly content, opinions, and so on. It mirrors perfectly our world, and we agree that besides positive, inspiring content, social media also has a negative side. However, we firmly believe that making companies and users legally responsible won't solve the problem actually, but instead make it worse, especially in some parts of the world. To sustain our point of view, we bring two arguments and an alternative plan. Our first point is that there is a fundamental problem with this idea which makes it impossible to be an efficient solution. Essentially, subjectiveness, perceptions, and prejudice makes it impossible to precisely filter enormous amounts of data each second from billions of people, and that's what the Pro team gave us. The line between positive and negative aspects on social media is thin and vulnerable. So the question is, who decides what is hate speech and emotional criticism? Who decides what is incitement to violence and a call to protest against a corrupt regime? The line between the valuable positive sides of social media and the negative ones is very thin and interpretable. By creating a law enforcement for punishing hate speech, fake news, and incitement to violence, companies will attempt to filter more the information, and there is no doubt that both good and bad data on social media will be affected. And we don't talk about the obvious messages, we talk about the ones that can be interpreted, which are in an enormous amount. And one last question for this point. After implementing this law, how would the government bring thousands of people in court for their action? Is this actually possible? Imagine how many messages could be taken as violent or fake news, even if they are not. How would the court be able to handle that much of a load? Coming to our second point is that freedom of expression, speech, and criticize the democratic value, enabling citizens to voice their concerns publicly. Criticize and report abusive measures taken, regimes, leadership, politicians, and crimes. Social media is a great way through which journalists and citizens can bring corruption, hidden crimes to light, making sure that the democracy functions and people have access to truth. In a world where political trust is alarmingly decreasing. According to Pew Research Center, public trust in the government remains near historic lows. Only 17% of Americans today say they can trust the government and legal system in Washington. And the Pro team suggests giving this legal tool to these people to determine what is right and wrong, fake news and truth, to practically filter information. Won't they filter it in their own interest, discard and simply hide any information that highlights a less moral practice of theirs, claiming it is hate speech, calling it fake news or incitement to violence? Take the example of Romania in 2017, where the government led by Liviu Dragnea attempted to change the law in the benefit of corruption. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered, and through their protest organized online, on social media, they succeeded to stop this immoral attempt, and at the end of the day saved the democracy in Romania. What kind of an impact has that? What if Dragnea had the legal tool to discard all the social media activity of journalists and activists, calling it fake news or violence incitement, even though the protests were without any violence? We probably wouldn't be a democracy anymore. And this is a huge risk in Western countries, but what about the developing countries with rather authoritarian regimes? We practically empower dictatorship, giving it the perfect tool to oppress and control the last spark of democracy. It sounds good to remove the negative side of social media, but in practice, it is impossible without this negative flip side of a coin. Do we want to give governments this huge weapon of controlling social media? And how we prove that that the corruption is in such a mess today? A 2017 survey from Transparency International says that perhaps unsurprisingly 57% of people said their government was doing badly at fighting corruption. Imagine 57%, that's more than half of the people interviewed in this survey. So we come to our only viable alternative, that of educating people for a more responsible usage of social media, starting with parents not allowing children under a certain age, which are most impressionable. And governments could take other measures that are more efficient, like Romania with their știrioficiale.ro website, through which they give the population reliable information about the coronavirus. So let's take the more viable options and save this virtual world. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for respecting the time. We have come now to the grand crossfire, to the normal crossfire again, sorry, where speakers 1 and 2 shall ask each other questions. Before that, Radu, Miruna, do you need any amount of prep time?
No.
Me neither.
Miruna? Okay, it's okay, it's okay. So, if there is no amount of prep time needed, you guys know that this lasts for 3 minutes. The first question is always asked by the earlier speaker. I interpret that as, since Radu spoke last, he's the earlier speaker, so he has the first question. When you are ready, I have set the timer and the crossfire starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
I'd like to start with the question of implementing your this motion. So how could you implement such a law that affects such an amount of people that have this improper activity online? How would you bring all these people in court, and how would you punish them?
Well, first of all, we are very aware of the fact that the extent to which social media has developed allows it to keep track of all the posts. So if you're able to keep track of all the posts, then I suppose you are able to create a large-scale system which regulates social media, which has nothing to do with government. So we don't have to involve governments here, but we have to create an institution which regulates social media.
Okay, do you have a question or?
Yeah.
I'd like to listen.
Okay. You talked about platforms or social media that could be used or that could discard information in their interest so as to manipulate masses. Do you have an actual example when this has happened, social media being involved in manipulation?
For example, so it's obvious that social media is used for manipulating people. That's how they work. They want us to have our eyes focused on the screen. So therefore, they bring us they bring us on the screen the things that we want to see. So that's proven in the movie Social Dilemma. That social media companies, for their profit, they sell us to other companies, and our time on this spent on the screen. So that's proven in the movie.
Right, but if you say that they can use this tool to manipulate us, don't you think that there should be some sort of legal constraint? Also, you didn't give me the example, the real example where they manipulated us.
Okay, so that's what the problem is coming, because a law is given by the government. So that's that could be a problem if the government should interact in this virtual world, because the government could use this massive tool, that of social media, to manipulate its population in their interest. And that's what we want to avoid. And to sustain this, we think that the government has other viable options, that of educating people, that of providing viable websites for informations that are true and sustained by studies.
Well, just to reinforce this, our approach does not involve governments. This is just creating a large-scale system which regulates social media. So it has nothing to do with the government.
Do you think that you could implement such an institution that affects the entire world? Imagine how different the countries and the relations are between each other.
Yes, I think it is possible, because we see, you talked about social dilemma. Well, then you must know that social media kind of creates patterns of its users. So they're very well aware.
Time has expired, but you have finished your sentence. The crossfire is now over, and we go back to the speaker card. So now, as per this, Alexandru. No, sorry, Petra will speak since Miruna started.
Can I take to prepare?
Of course. How much prep time do you need?
1 minute.
Okay, you now have 2 minutes left of your prep time. Your prep time has expired. If you need more prep time, feel free to say so.
No, I'm ready.
Okay,
Let me just start my timer.
I agree.
I will start now. In your first contention, you talked about how it is not an effective solution. I'm here to prove to you that it can be an effective solution. Of course, the change will not happen overnight. Today we start with 10 cases, tomorrow we go to 100 cases, and in the end the system will adapt. Institutions will be created specifically for this reason, and we can also look that it is good for the legal system because more jobs will be created in the legal systems. Also, you can't just ignore, I can't say that I'm not going to punish murder because there are just too many murders and I can't catch every single murderer on this earth. I still try, and in the end, the system will perfect itself. Of course, it's going to take some time. We can't expect change to happen overnight. That tomorrow we put this law and then no hate speech is going to be on social media, but we have to do something because what the companies are doing right now, it's obviously not working. You also talked about corruption. And the government's corruption, how the government will use social media as a tool in order to manipulate people. I come here to tell you that what happened to Donald Trump is corruption, and it encourages oppression. Donald Trump did not face any legal consequences, and in the end, 5 people died in the Capitol riots. Is that really justice? Is that not corruption? Do you truly believe that it was enough? This just shows that you can post anything on social media if you are white, rich, and the former president of the United States, and the worst that can happen is you get your post taken down. You also said who decides what hate speech and what incitement to violence really is. Isn't it pretty obvious? I mean, hate speech is when you go publicly and talk about an oppressed community, a minority, the LGBT community. And of course, if it will be the case, we don't just go there and say, yes, we're going to find these people. No, there will be further investigations with the help of the legal system. The government is not involved here. We're talking about the legal system. Then how do you propose to change things if we don't take any legal actions? We just tell the companies, hey, do better, take down some fake news and hate posts. No, they are not going to listen to that because companies are financially driven. Companies do not care about people. Companies care about the money. And to them, more posts equals more money. And usually this kind of fake news sound intriguing and interesting, so they get more likes, and more likes means more views, and more views means more money. We go to money again. Facebook did not change anything about their policy before they were fined with $5 billion. So obviously not doing anything about it, it's not a solution. We have to change something, and we have to do it legally if we want to see the results. Also, you talked about the good side of social media, the good posts, how with the Black Lives Matter movement. Yes, there are some good sides of social media, but don't you believe that the negative aspects overshadow the good sides? Like, only because I do a good thing does not mean that I'm a good person and that I'm a good mechanism. And if you do good things, it doesn't mean that you should not be punished for the bad things that you do. So in conclusion, we believe that taking legal actions against social media corporations and their users is the only way of changing things for the better and making social media a safer environment for its users. Thank you.
Okay. So now, excuse me, we go back to Alexandru, who has his 4 minutes. Before that, Alexandru, do you need any amount of prep time?
Yes, I will take 1 minute, please.
Of course. your prep time is up. By this time, both teams have 2 minutes of prep time left. Do you need an additional amount of prep time, or are you ready to go?
I am ready to go, and I will start in 3, 2, 1, go. My first point of rebuttal is bound to the impossibility of implementing a law enforcement, and that is because of the logistics, first of all. You cannot precisely filter billions of informations that are posted every second, because according to Statista, now 4 billion of people have access, and next year there will be another billion of people who will gain access. So no matter what form of supervision no matter what form you will implement, it is practically inefficient and impossible to keep up with the pace of how our world and how our technology is developing. Furthermore, our study has shown that only 17% of the people in America, for example, which is a democratic region, only 17% of these people trust in the system, not only in the government but in the system. And another study my colleague brought up was that people believe that 56% of the corruption is in the whole system. So we are asking the question: these people know why they don't trust the system, know what is corruption in this system, and therefore they cannot rely on this system to give it practically the legal tool to manipulate and regulate the flow of data they get in contact with. So practically a democracy functions with informations. And if we give the informations into a broken state, and if we give the legal tool into a broken system that is barely functioning in reality, how could it function in the fictional world, in the virtual world? Well, it is impossible. And you gave also the example of Trump. Well, Trump was banned from Twitter first of all, so Twitter and these social apps are already taking actions. And if we stay to analyze, yes, fake news brought Trump power and made him powerful, but also the social media, the freedom of speech, and the fact that independent journalists posted and exposed his corruption brought him down, showed Donald Trump's real face and made him lose the elections. And therefore, we can prove that freedom of speech assures that there is kind of a balance on social media. And yes, there are a negative side and a positive side. But if you want to put a legal system above this positive and negative sides, it will affect both sides. And we don't think that this is necessary, especially if we think that education is a solution, is an alternative. Why all of your examples with the deaths of people because of fake news were coming from America, where America is notoriously known for a weak educational system. Let's look at Finland, for example, which has no deaths in street manifestations, and because Finland is notoriously known for its good educational system. It is a problem of people. Why some people believe what they see on fake news and other people know how to deal with those fake news? Why some people are so manipulable and others not? Well, if you want to profoundly solve the problem, we need to educate the society. And we will do this through efficient campaigns. And we will do this in a shorter time that you could implement your legal system that will also pose the exponential risk of giving exactly a person like Trump the legal tool to manipulate the flow of information, to say, okay, this is affecting me, so this is hate speech, this is incitement to violence, we will cancel it, it will no longer stay on social media. Well, we don't want to empower dictatorship, and we have the alternative of education and of creating reliable sources of information. So that was my speech, thank you.
Okay. So now we arrive to the second crossfire between speakers 3 and 4. In this crossfire, Petra and Alexandru will ask each other questions. Before we begin the crossfire though, does anyone need any amount of prep time?
I do not need any prep time.
Thank you. Okay, in that case, the first question goes to the earlier speaker. So Alexandru, you have the honor of asking the first question. I shall set the timer now. This crossfire is actually 3 minutes long, as the last one. So the crossfire begins in 3, 2, 1.
Okay, thank you. So my first question is, considering the fact that right now some people are oppressing, some people are corrupt in the system, why don't you think that exactly those people will try to infiltrate in your legal system, and through this legal system expand the bad and negative aspects they are harming the society with?
Well, you keep talking about corruption as it is the main focus on our motion. Of course, there are corrupted people, and we do not claim that the system is perfect, but not doing anything would be a lot worse than if we give the system a chance to try and make things right, because the social media corporations already had their chance of making things right, and they have failed.
How come? Okay, but don't you think that we could give this chance through another method? How come that social media is extended for half of the world, and it's taking hours of our day, but it's still not a single hour in our educational system about social media, about the threats on social media?
Well, that is another problem in the educational system, but we're not talking about the educational system. We're talking about the law system, and we're not talking about the government, we're talking about the law system. And I kept repeating that, but you still talk about the government. Can I ask you a question now?
Yes.
Okay, you keep talking about the government, and as I have stated before, I do not see its relevance with our motion. Can you please give me one example when the government used social media to manipulate people? And because you see, most of the times fake news go against the government. So when it benefited the government, the spread of fake news and hate speech and incitement to that.
Yes, this is the point right now. Because of the freedom of speech, there is this balance. So maybe system, there is fake news, but these fake news are combated with other real news. And if we try to implement the legal system, both of these sides will be affected. And we don't want to take this risk, because look at China, for example, look at North Korea, who have total control above the social media apps. They have their own social media apps. Do you think those people are happy and free in those countries?
Yes, but we do not talk about the government, and we do not want to control what is on social media. How can the discussion be about free speech when you are a racist?
Well, it's the problem with education. How come not all the people are racist? It is like not coming from the social, it's not the social media fault that people are racist and manifest their racism online. It's rather the fault of the educational system. So if you want to profoundly solve the problem, you have to focus on education and of creating a more reliable source of information.
How can you say that is not
You can finish that if it's going to be a sentence. If it was another question, you're not permitted to ask it.
Okay, I just want to say that it is the social media's fault because of the way that it works, the way that the algorithms work. People that have the same interest, and that a racist will see the post of a racist, and that will form a hate group. And hate groups make hate crimes. Thank you.
Okay. The crossfire has now been completed. And we go back to the summaries. Speaker 1, or in this case, Miruna, you now have the honor of speaking your summary. It's 3 minutes long. And before that, do you need any amount of prep time?
Yes, I would like to take 1 minute of prep time.
Okay, you have 1 minute left.
Thank you.
Your prep time starts now. Miruna, your prep time is up.
All right. I'll run my clock. In 3, 2, 1, go. So in the beginning of my summary speech, I would like to clarify something. Our approach to this issue is creating a large scale or an institution which operates at a large scale. So we're not talking about governments and involving them and involving social media in corruption or anything. This is just an institution which operates independently. Now, about the Khan case. They have agreed with us that social media may have an ulterior motive, and I would like to draw attention to this. Corporations are financially driven companies which only operate with certain algorithms so as they can attract more users and hence more traffic and more money. Now, they have not proved their impact regarding the prejudices and the involvement of social media in corruption, in mass corruption. And they have also talked about how it is impossible to filter information on social media. Well, the first speaker of the Conti mentioned that he watched the Social Dilemma documentary. So I assume that he's well aware of the fact that social media is building patterns of its users and is very well aware of every single piece of content that we interact with. So their argument does not stand. Also, they talked about using social media as a tool for oppression and involving it in corruption. You seem to forget that we are also talking here about incitement to violence and hate speech. Do you suggest that we just forget these issues exist when Asian Americans are being abused and murdered? So we only focus on fake news here? They have not addressed this. Now, about our speech, we have proved that because of their business model, social media platforms foster echo chambers and content bubbles, which create an entire environment where people and their violent content and beliefs are amplified with no liability, which is clearly visible nowadays through the hate crimes against Asian Americans. So we strongly believe that by sanctioning users, we can strongly reduce the rates of violence and hate, and while holding corporations responsible, legally responsible, we can determine them to modify these algorithms and create more strict policies so that they can combat such issues like misinformation, incitement to violence, and hate speech. Thank you.
Right on time. So now we move back to Radu. Before that, do you need any time, prep time whatsoever?
I don't need any prep time.
Okay.
Myself.
Before you begin, I would like to address that you guys have 2 minutes of prep time left while Petra and Miruna have 1 minute. Okay, I shall prepare the timer. You as well have 3 minutes to give us a summary.
Sure, I can start in 3, 2, 1, now. We live in the times of digitalization, and with all its benefits, this virtual world we are talking about in this topic today has also massive downsides. The Pro team suggests that if a legal institution makes social media companies and its users legally responsible, this negative side of the virtual network will be just over. Well, unfortunately, we do not live in a utopic world where every country on this planet is at peace with each other. How could a legal institution exist and be a part of the government? That's they're saying all in all their speeches, that they create a legal institution. We are not talking about the government, but that's how democracy works. That's how the government works. The legal system is part of any democracy and is tied to our leaders. And let's just say this institution could be realistically created. How could it possibly satisfy every leader on the planet? Unfortunately, we live in a real imperfect world where people still think that vaccines kill them with 5G. Leaders like Trump promote violence online and are still presidents, and leaders like Liviu Dragnea try to protect corruption. Do you really think that this kind of leaders will accept this institution and accept just like that some institution creates laws regarding the virtual world that has that much impact on the society? let's just hope this could have happened, but unfortunately it literally can't. We proved that more than half of the people asked say people can't fight against corruption. And if we talk about laws, we talk about the leaders. We need to open our eyes and use the options that could actually work in our world today. Let's educate the people. Let's implement this education in school, in college, at work, at events, at festivals. We have the opportunity to create viable sources like știrioficiale.ro where people could just find true and proven information. We as a con team think real. We are living the truth and want to find a solution that can work. We all know that social network is not safe, but we can fix this. And we, in our speeches today, together, me and my colleague, prove that this legal institution could not possibly work as the pro team is saying. So we just want to take the safe options, to take the options that we provided and make this a safer place, make this educated parents to not let their kids create accounts, educate the population as much as we can to protect themselves against fake news, giving them viable sources so that they can choose where they take their news from, teach them to research, teach them to not accept every information they find online. So unfortunately, our world is not perfect, but we can at least improve it because this social network is our future and we need to make it as safe as possible. So let's weigh the both options and take the safer one. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your summary. Now we have arrived to the Grand Crossfire, which lasts 3 minutes, and you guys have the right to ask each other's questions. Before we begin the Grand Crossfire, 2 things have to be resolved. First thing, does anyone need prep time?
No.
Okay. Second thing, there are no rules pertaining to the order of questions in the Grand Crossfire. So I would like to know who wants to ask the first question. And if you can, okay. So Petra or Alexandru, who is going to be?
I will let the girls.
Okay. Before we begin, I shall start the time. We have 3 minutes for the Grand Crossfire. Keep it civil, be assertive, and good luck. The Grand Crossfire starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, so you kept talking about education and how education is our salvation and it is the safer way to resolve things. Okay, so we are educated. We as kids were educated not to talk to strangers. Did that mean that we were safe? Did that mean that there was never a chance that, I don't know, some stranger comes and kidnap us just because we're educated not to talk to strangers?
Okay, let's invert this question. You have this stranger that is violent on social media, okay? Let's say he's fined like $10,000, but he's a millionaire. He's fined that he was violent online. Won't he come back and be violent again? Are we safe then?
And furthermore, we have the possibility already to block, to make our accounts private and report that person on social media. So we don't see the point of a legal system.
Yeah, but these, sorry.
You can say I have a question after.
Okay. These measures that you talked about, blocking, reporting, restricting, those apply to cyberbullying. We're talking about hate speech, which is a entire phenomenon which affects communities like the LGBT community, the Black people.
Yes, but you always have the choice to not get involved in such information. And even if you see it, you have the choice to not believe it directly or to not be affected by it if you have a strong education. And my further question is about your independent institution. Who will operate in this institution? Who will found this institution? Because such a large institution will need money to take from somewhere.
Well, we have scientists, we have psychologists, we have experts in this area of technology and media. They can operate there. There's a lot of bright minds out there which can come together and pool their information and skills to the betterment, like to improve.
And you're talking as if institutions that work over the governments don't already exist, like, I don't know, the United Nations, the European Union.
Well,
yeah, but that's concentrated in an area on the world. You're talking about an institution that spreads around the whole planet. How would every country accept this institution, and how will they accept that it will operate with their own laws? Because you're implementing a law. The government has to accept that law and to accept that its population will suffer from that law. So how could you? It's impossible. The idea is not.
Our point is that it sounds great and it's a sweet promise, but it is not practically efficient and possible.
The government has to accept this law because it concerns only social media, no other political affairs involved.
And with that, we have ended the Grand Crossfire. Thank you very much. Now we arrive at the summary. Oh, sorry, final focus. And at the final focus, we have Petra speaking first. And before that, do you need any amount of prep time?
Yes, can I use the 1 minute?
Yes, of course. 1 minute of prep time coming up. Your prep time begins now. Your prep time has expired.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to start my speech right now. We ask you to please keep in mind and to not forget that corporations do not care about people. They do not care about what is morally right or wrong because they are not persons. They do not have empathy towards the oppressed communities and the communities that suffer from hate speech and incitements to violence. You kept talking about fake news and how you can solve fake news through education. The opposing team has not touched the fact, and they do not have an impact when we are talking about hate speech and incitement to violence. When we are not talking about corruption, we are talking about real lives suffering and people dying. Facebook didn't change anything until they were fined with $5 billion because corporations are financially driven. And usually when a post about a fake news or incitement to violence sounds more eccentric and more exotic, it gets more attention. And we already talked about this, how more likes means more money for them. The social media corporations have the ability to see every single post that goes on social media, because believe me, if they saw that I liked 4 posts about makeup and the other post I see is still about makeup, they know what I'm doing on social media and they know what it is in those posts. We do not believe that corruption is a relevant topic to touch here, especially when we are talking about communities suffering from oppression and incitement to violence and hate speech. In conclusion, we believe that we need to take action in order to prevent the users from being the victims of hate speech, incitement to violence, and fake news. The companies have already had their chance to make things right, but obviously they have failed. If they wouldn't have failed, we wouldn't have this discussion right now. Thank you.
Very well. And with that, we move to the final part of the debate. to speaker 4, which would be Alexandru. Alexandru, do you need any amount of prep time?
Yes, I will take the rest of my prep time.
Okay, I believe that amounts to 2 minutes.
Yes.
Your prep time has expired.
Okay, then I will start in 3, 2, 1, go. First of all, I want to say that the idea of the protein sounds good. It is like a sweet promise that we could fix this whole negative part from the social media through creating this institution. But this institution will only mirror the system. If the system is broken, it cannot create and develop an institution that would be independent without that the same persons who are now making the system broken infiltrate in these new institution, which, by the way, is taking so much time to develop, because no one mentioned about the AI or any technique that involves technology that could be efficient. It's, by the way, really hard to practically regulate the flow of billions of people. So there is a problem with the logistics of the institution, with the efficiency of the institution, and there's the fundamental issue that the people ruling this institution will come also from the system. So if we have the broken system, then the institution will simply mirror the same problems as the system. And we also have that risk of making this institution rather a tool for dictatorship, of a tool for people who want to gain more power. So we don't want to assume that risk. And since it will also take time to implement such a fairy tale institution, we would say that education is the rather better solution, because through education we cut the problem from the roots. Well, if you want people, if there will be always threats, not only on social media, also in real life. But if you want people to be responsible and to be able to deal with these issues, we need to educate them. And it was clear that in America presents much of these issues because America has a rotten educational system. But in parts as Finland with a better education system, it's not the case. So
your time is up.
So
finish the sentence.
We think that education is the real solution to this problem and is posing no risk. So thank you.
Okay. Good. We are finished with the speaking part. Now we come to the judging part.